In 2000, the Government of Canada launched the Canada Research Chairs program, the centerpiece of a national strategy to make Canada a world leader in research and innovation. The strategy was really quite simple. Recruit and invest in top talent. Researchers who, if given appropriate resources, could truly make an impact. Shareholders aim to achieve research excellence in a wide range of disciplines, including science, health, humanities, and social sciences. Their research improves our depth of knowledge and quality of life, strengthens Canada's international competitiveness, and helps to develop the next generation of researchers and highly skilled workers. But for shareholders to do such groundbreaking research, they often need sophisticated equipment and infrastructure. The Canada Foundation for Innovation supports this need by providing grants to develop such infrastructure, including the person-centered e-health information system that you're going to hear about later on. And through matching funding from Cambion, the Arthur Child Foundation, and a generous donation from AmBlad, this unique digital health assessment system is being realized. I want to introduce some very special guests that are here tonight to help us celebrate. And that is Dr. Sawatzky's family, his wife Helma, and his parents George and Marge Sawatzky. We are also honored that several dignitaries were able to join us this evening. Teiko Van Popta, Member of Parliament for Langley Aldergrove, Tamara Jansen, the Member of Parliament for Cloverdale Langley City, Margaret Kunst, the Acting Mayor for the Township of Langley, Langley City Councillor Rudy Storteboom, and from the Township of Langley, Councillor Blair Whitmarsh. I also want to thank the many researchers from other institutions who have collaborated with Rick. We are thrilled you are able to join us tonight in this celebration. Now, I would like to invite Patty Victor, University Seum, to give the Indigenous welcome.
This evening, I greeted you in the beautiful language of the Stalo people. The language is Hokamelan, acknowledging and welcoming you to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people, and in particular the Kwantlen, the Katzie, and the Semiahmoo people. It's a delight to be here tonight and to honor Rick tonight. In our culture, our elders are so important to us. In our culture, it's important for us to honor those who use God-given creativity and innovation to provide good care for our elders. And so appreciate being able to have this opportunity to stand and to honor you tonight. If we were in the Longhouse tonight, we would have you standing on a bed of cedar boughs as a traditional honor for those who have taken that step forward and done such good work, and not just for yourself, but it's for others. And so I want to acknowledge that tonight, the importance of using the things that God has given to us. Tonight I want to just share a prayer song with you tonight. When we, in our traditions of the Stalo people, when we gather in places like this, and it's a gathering to celebrate, and it's a gathering to honor someone, is that we always want to gather together with a good heart and with a good mind. And in our language, that word is Latsamot. And so tonight, as I sing this song, it's a song that was given to us from our dear late elder Shirley Norris from Stalo territory, and she's from the Sta'alis community. And I'm going to sing it in Halkamelan, and it's a song that just acknowledging that God is the sovereign God, and that God loves each one of us, and He has purpose and plan for our gathering today, and to honor Rick today as well for the good work, and to honor his family that's come and supported him. We're so thankful for the leadership of Trinity, who realizes the importance that we need to be acknowledging the land and the traditional people of this land. But it's not just acknowledging the land, acknowledging our commitment to walk together in a good way, together, to acknowledge that there is a past, to acknowledge that today that we've gathered here today for this purpose, and to honor our dear loved one here tonight. But it's also to acknowledge that future days, the days ahead, that we are going to walk together in a good way. So it's in that heart and my acknowledgement of the leadership opportunity today that I want to say thank you to our leadership for acknowledging the importance of that. So this is a prayer song, and so just take that attitude of prayer as I sing this song. Oh, 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 till say dawn. Oh, 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 till say dawn. Oh, Jesus, young, Coel, Elsie Wells, Oxford, Jasper, the Amherst slash good the Amherst slash good oh, 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 till say dawn. Oh, 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 till say dawn. Oh, Jesus, young, well, Elsie Wells, Oxford, Jasper, the Amherst slash good the Amherst slash good God bless you.
Thank you for those words of welcome, Patty. My name is Bob Wood. I'm the provost here at the university, and in the capacity of provost, it's my privilege to work with a tremendous group of faculty. These faculty are passionate about teaching, not just giving knowledge about their discipline, but engaging students in a very personal way. Somebody's taking care of it back there. In a very personal way, and wanting to help them develop not just academically, but as a whole person. Our faculty are very engaged scholars. We're a member of the Coalition of Christian Colleges and Universities, over 100 institutions in the US and Canada. And we are probably in the top handful of schools in terms of research outcomes as an institution. And I would say in the School of Nursing, we're probably at the top spot in the coalition. Our faculty are also very committed to being Christians and engaging their faith in a way that imparts that to students in the classroom and in their research endeavors. And they provide Christian leadership in support of the university's mission. Our faculty, just like other universities in Canada, progress through ranks, assistant, associate, full. Let me just read you a little bit about the expectations of full professors at Trinity Western. The full professor rank is reserved for professors who have an outstanding record in each of teaching, scholarship, and community service. Candidates must be excellent teachers with both a demonstrated depth and breadth of scholarship. They must be recognized leaders in their area of specialization. The promotion committee members speak of a national or international reputation. Their service must also have made an impact on the university community, as well as on their church and the broader community. Each applicant that is promoted to full professor must meet each of the criteria or exceed the criteria for the rank. Rick, today we're recognizing you not only as meeting but exceeding the expectations of the rank of full professor at Trinity Western University, and we're thankful for the way that you are using the gifts that God has given to you in a manner that is honoring to Him, to the university, and to the community abroad. So congratulations.
As I mentioned, we are very grateful that several dignitaries could join us today. And now I'd like to invite Teiko Van Popta, the NP for this riding, to come and share a few words.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a homecoming. When I come here, I graduated from Trinity Western with a history degree back in the 80s. And after that, a long and winding road, I am now a member of Parliament for this riding. I've always kept my association with Trinity alive and well, and I'm very proud to have Trinity in my riding. I had the opportunity in the House of Commons a week or two ago to say something positive about Trinity. I only got about halfway through my speech. I said, "Go Spartans," and everybody started clapping, and the Speaker of the House thought it was finished. So somebody else said, "I'm not finished yet." So I will finish my little speech about Trinity in the House of Commons at the next opportunity. So it's really good to be here. I just had the pleasure of meeting Rick this evening and his wife, and he gave us a little bit of a preview about what his talk is going to be. I understand that Canada is at a crossroads where we now have more seniors than young people, however you might define senior and young. But obviously it has a big impact on Canadian culture, how we deal with seniors, of course the makeup of the workforce, seniors housing, healthcare, and I'm sure Rick is going to tell us a bit more about that. I'm just really thrilled that you have been awarded a Canada Chair, Research Chair. Congratulations on that. I understand that with this possibility now for additional research, Canada is positioned to become an international leader in person-centered outcomes measurement systems. I'm looking forward to hearing what that is all about. Congratulations. Well done, and congratulations for Trinity for backing up Dr. Sawatzky in this way. Thank you very much.
So this is a wonderful event, and thank you all for coming. As you will see this evening, Professor Rick Sawatzky is a stunningly gifted scholar. And as president of Trinity Western University, I'm so very grateful to have you on faculty. Tonight's event is a fitting recognition of the renewal of Professor Sawatzky's Canada Research Chair, his promotion to full professor, and a public celebration of his vital partnership with Cambia. Dr. Sawatzky, on behalf of the entire university, faculty, staff, students, and trustees, please know how very proud we are of you. The value and academic and public significance of your work is commendable. You're a scholar whose work not only demonstrates excellence, but you have found meaningful ways of using your intellectual gifts, compassion, and imagination to make a profound difference in the lives of patients, the field of healthcare, and you've created both conceptual and practical ways of improving the quality of life and practice of medicine. As we all know, the delivery of healthcare is a social good, with direct and life-changing value for patients and their families. And with good reason, the public looks to universities to be centers of discovery, insight, and innovation. And it must be a source of great joy and satisfaction to be able to carry out research and scholarship that changes people's lives. We're honored that you're a member of the Trinity Western University faculty. And as Canada's leading global Christian university, we highly value the significant financial investment and support of the Canada Foundation for Innovation. In addition, and if Anne Blau could step forward, we deeply and genuinely appreciate the generous financial support of individuals who demonstrate their confidence in the mission and work of the university in concrete ways. Among these donors and friends, Anne Blau deserves particular mention, and if Anne doesn't move forward, I'll move forward to her. Thank you, Ms. Blau. Good to be with you, and we want the picture to work out. Just to continue on with the bearing of good gifts, universities can seldom achieve excellence in the fields of medicine and technology without strong, innovative partners. Trinity Western University and Dr. Sawatzky are privileged to have such a partner in Cambridge, an innovative company committed to improving healthcare and the quality of life for patients and their caregivers. On behalf of Trinity Western University and the School of Nursing, would you join me in thanking the founder and CEO of KV, Dr. Bruce Furr. Thank you so much for your vision and for your willingness to partner with such a gifted scholar. Our hope, of course, is that this work not only is a blessing to many, but also is a way of recognizing the value and the social value of your company. And we appreciate your commitment very much. Once again, thank you, Dr. Sawatzky, for the way that you offer your gifts, energy, and humane spirit to the laudable task of improving life outcomes for patients. And thank you for being an exemplary professor.
My name is Cheryl Reimer-Kirkham, and I'm the Dean for the School of Nursing. And I'm going to just offer some words of introduction as in great pleasure, Rick, to introduce you to our group. And Dr. Richard Sawatzky, so I think most of us in the room know him as Rick. Rick, whether we have known you for many years or whether tonight might be one of the first times we've met you, I'm hoping to introduce you in a way that people will be able to listen to what you have to say and hear things in a new way. So I might, so it's not a roast that I'm about to do for you. We did that at your School of Nursing celebration in May, but I think that maybe I have some little new insights for you about Rick. So, but you can relax mostly. So we're here to celebrate then your full professorship and your renewal of the chair. This is an important evening, and it's an evening of great celebration. And you've been able to bring, as we've already heard, this novel voice to allow patients to have a new way, a novel way of making themselves and their wishes and what would be best for them known through technology of all things. Really, in lots of ways, technology becomes a vehicle for this. And to do this with people who have very complex health challenges is really quite remarkable too. You've brought some real elegance and simplicity to how this interface happens, and yet this is such complex terrain on which you're working. So we're very grateful for that and really look forward to hearing more about that tonight. Rick, just to say a little bit more about him. So Rick joined the faculty at Trinity Western University in 2002 when he started to teach in the BSN program. And when I went back to your CV, Rick, I was struck by the first 3 courses that you taught, because in lots of ways they're threaded through in what you're speaking about today. So Rick taught health assessment, so the tool that he's going to introduce us to is about assessment. Rick taught care of the older adult. Turns out that's the population he's involved with still. And Rick taught nursing research. So isn't that amazing how those threads have carried forward through the years? So I wanted to remark on that. After he completed his PhD in 2007, he followed with a postdoctorate in health outcomes measurement at the Arthritis Research Centre of Canada, and I think it's telling that his colleagues from that, Dr. Sterling Bryan, and also his colleagues from the University of British Columbia from your studies there are here also to celebrate. So it's a real testament to Rick's relationality as a student and as a scholar, how he's continuing to work with his colleagues. He's got international appointment, Sweden's University of Gothenburg, and he leads international research teams. Rick is really sought after as a collaborator, and I'm going to tell you 4 reasons why he's so sought after as a collaborator on research projects. In part because he is such a team player. But first of all, I want to highlight for you that Rick is sought after as a collaborator because his research is very meaningful. Rick would never do research. Rick would never commit himself to research if he didn't think it was profoundly meaningful and could make a difference. He has many involvements, makes many contributions, but his modus operandi is always that they're meaningful and are going to make a difference. So in lots of ways, it's not the science for the sake of science, but it's for what it can make, what the difference it can bring. The second reason why I think you'll be impressed by what Rick has to say today, and also why he kind of is a bit of a magnet for people wanting to work with him, is really his brilliant mind. And when I was speaking to my husband last night about introducing you, Rick, and you know, we've had lots of conversations over dinner, and Rob said, well, the thing about Rick is this. I'm going to quote my husband. Rick is someone who can have a great conversation with someone who knows a lot less than he does. And I added, and Rick can make great contributions to conversations on subjects he doesn't even know about. But he does, right? So just think about your conversations with Rick. He can engage on anything. Okay, so the third reason why I think Rick is so sought after is that he is a very kind mentor. And he pushes his students, he pushes his colleagues to success, to do their best. And he's a very fine educator. Rick, you just mentioned to me that you've had more than 500 research assistants, undergraduate and graduate research assistants as part of your research. That's an example. And what I wanted to add here, Rick, is we're actually kind of relieved that you don't follow through on some of the ways you were taught. Rick is probably the only academic I know that was able to score -0, less than 0 on a test. So, this is one of Rick's claims to fame, in that his professor used a right minus wrong approach in scoring an exam, so Rick, we're glad that you don't do that. And finally, I think this word that applies to Rick, when I think about you, Rick, he is a very decent mensch. So to translate from Yiddish and German, this idea that he is a person with integrity and honor. He is exceptionally well partnered with another mensch, Helma. And Helma, we're so pleased to have you with us tonight. So with that, please join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Richard Sawatzky.
It's so wonderful to have you all here. Like, you're really part of a community, and I actually very much mean it, that it isn't about me at all. None of this would have been possible without working with so many wonderful people, and I really see myself more as somebody kind of kindling the light in a particular community, and a community then taking off, and hopefully myself working in the background of that. I'm going to start off actually with a video that's been developed. It's a short 6-minute film that's been developed by Madison. Madison's here in the audience, Madison Stenner. She's a undergraduate student here and is doing a minor in film studies. And the film was developed with input from several trainees, research trainees here at Trinity Western University, and also elsewhere at UVic and the University of Alberta, and a large research team of people from health authorities and universities and government, to kind of get a feeling across of what are we actually trying to accomplish. And so this is not a didactic type of video. It's not meant to be didactic, but it's a video that is meant to convey a feeling. I don't have my lapel mic on, but I think it's coming across okay. Yeah. So now I'll just need to flip screens to start the video. Excuse me. That will come later. So, don't have any popcorn, but it's only 6 minutes.
John!
Come on. Took you long enough.
So, I have an idea. Do either of you know what quality of life assessments are?
No.
So, quality of life assessments are questions that ask you about various aspects of your life. They ask about your level of independence, satisfaction with treatment and care, comfort, social well-being, and more. They ask you to think back on a specific period of time, like the last 2 days or this past month.
Okay. And then how is this used? And how is this beneficial to my dad?
Actually, you both will be able to use them to better your health, both as patient and as primary caregiver. So if you so choose, your results are reported directly to me and your other healthcare providers, and I look at them together with the typical data and assessments I use to better your health in a way that's personalized to each of your needs. They may even bring up aspects of your health that you haven't had the opportunity to think much about. There's even one assessment that is specifically suited to your arthritis, John.
Huh?
You interested in giving it a whirl?
Well, I guess I'm interested in trying it if my dad is. What do you say? I guess it's time to try something new, huh?
Well, let's get started already.
So you can easily pull up any assessment I assign for you to do through the internet. The first one I'll have you do begins with this question. Over the past 2 days, communication with people you care about has been 0, difficult, to 10, very easy. Okay? Or for John, in the last 2 months, I've felt that I've had time for self-care, never, rarely, some of the time, or all of the time.
Wow, never even thought of that.
you both have still consented to share your quality of life results with each other, which seemingly has also helped with your mutual communication and understanding. So now let's discuss your results. Ralph, it looks like there's been some improvement in your overall life satisfaction with the addition of music in your room, which seems to also allow John more time for his self-care. In comparison to my other patients, you're also doing well. Ralph, your disease seems to be managed for the time being. Although, it looks like you still are unsatisfied with your mobility. Well, there is a physiotherapist that some of my other patients recommend, whose office actually isn't too far from where you're at. So I'll send you home with this information. You can decide if he's a good fit.
That would be great, thanks.
Great. Otherwise, keep it up. In the meantime, I'm assigning you both another assessment.
Stop this quickly because I never know what comes up next. It's unusual. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. I like to show it at the beginning of presentations, this video or something else, because it brings to focus what the Canada Research Chair Program of Research on Person-Centered Outcomes is all about. Placing the person at the center of care. A focus that places the quality of life of people who are living with life-limiting illness and their family caregivers at the center of healthcare. So I'll give a little bit of research, a little bit of background on how we actually landed on this idea in healthcare. And there's so much that I could highlight. This is a long history, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that were particularly influential for me in forming a program of research. And one is that it actually starts with the WHO, World Health Organization, definition of health, which was proclaimed, well, originally actually in 1946 and then ratified in 1948, and is part of the Constitution of the World Health Organization. We hear so much about the World Health Organization focusing on disease and things like that. Currently, of course, the coronavirus, but actually there's a lot and a lot more to the World Health Organization. And it's right in their definition, where they state that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. And that in 1948 was a fairly radical statement. That definition hasn't been changed since by the WHO. It's, of course, like any definition, been widely critiqued, but nonetheless, it directs our attention to something that is not just biomedical, but includes a broader perspective of health and well-being. Another piece of the WHO that has influenced me is their program of research on quality of life assessment. They're actually one of the instigators of all of this. And well, they weren't the only ones. They came alongside with a larger movement of needing to draw attention to the quality of life of people who are receiving healthcare services. And at the time, the WHO pointed out provided a definition of quality of life as an individual's perception of their position in life in the context of culture and value systems. So diversity is very central to their definition, in which they live and in relation to their goals, expectations, standards, and concerns. And so this again brings a completely different orientation to health and healthcare services that has influenced how I and many others have been thinking about how do we actually get at measuring people's health outcomes, and whether the healthcare we provide is having the intended difference that we're hoping for. The third one, also by the WHO, is our recent integrated people-centered care framework, which has been was launched in 2016 and is now having a worldwide influence on how we think about primarily about primary healthcare services. Integrated people-centered care health services means putting the comprehensive needs of people and communities, not only their diseases, at the center of health systems, and empowering people to have a more active role in their own health. Now, it's not only the WHO so that's influenced me. There's a number of other things that have happened along the way, and there's many more things that I could put on this timeline. But these are ones that have been particularly influential in my thinking. One is the patient-centered care movement, and the Picker Institute played a major, and continues to play a major role in that movement. They're not the only ones, but they're certainly one of the main institutions promoting this worldwide. The other one is the International Society of Quality of Life Research, which was established in 1992 and which actually provided a context for a whole research community worldwide on studying what we actually mean by quality of life in healthcare and how we evaluate our healthcare services, whether they are making the desired difference to people's quality of life. Another one, more locally, is the CIHR, that is Canadian Institutes for Health Research, Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research, which was developed started early on in this century and continues to have a profound influence on health research in Canada by placing the patient's priorities of the center of the research that we do. So the whole point of the SPAR, they go by SPAR strategy, is to do research that matters to the priorities of patients, to put patients first in the research that we do. And then another one that has influenced me a great deal is the Gothenburg Center for Patient-Centered Care. It's at the University of Gothenburg, at Sawatzky Academy. And they've developed more kind of the philosophical underpinnings of what we mean by patient-centered care, person-centered care, people-centered care, and attending to quality of life. And they brought kind of an ethical perspective to all of this, a relational ethics perspective to all of this, which is a little bit missing from some of the other work. So together, this is kind of my background. If I were to provide you a scientific background on everything that I do, I would unpack this for the next couple of hours for you. But I'll spare you that. But it gives you a little bit of a snapshot where this comes from. And so out of that, out of the work we've been doing, I established 2 research goals. And one is to focus on interventions that support the use of what I'm calling person-centered outcomes through integration in person-centered health information systems. So we'll talk about that. And the next one is a focus on methods, and methods about how do we actually do this well, with a particular attention to measuring person-centered outcomes in diverse populations, recognizing that people have different understandings of which outcomes are relevant to them and what their meanings are, and then how to use that information for decision-making purposes. So I'll focus on the first one first. Interventions to support the use of person-centered outcomes. So these are the 2 objectives of the Canada Research Share program, so I thought I might share them with you. So first of all, the focus on person-centered outcomes. This objective involves viewing person-centered outcomes as foundational to person-centered care. It's based on the premise that the imperative of person-centered care, that's from an article from Joachim Collian, who is now the director of person-centered care at the University of Gothenburg. We wrote that article together with Cheryl, who is in the room here as well, and Barbara Astle, who is in the room here as well. And the imperative of person-centered care means that patients and families' quality of life, as well as their experiences with healthcare, should be routinely and comprehensively acknowledged and assessed. And so we need to understand what are patients' and families' experiences of the care they receive, and what are their outcomes in response to the care they receive. And traditionally, we've done that through existing indicators. We have patient-centered performance indicators in our healthcare system, and so those could be things like wait times. Like, if you wait for a very long time, that's typically not a good experience. And so we use that as kind of an indirect indicator of patient experience. And in the outcomes category, we of course have a host of clinical outcomes, surgery being successful or not. But what is missing in many of our information systems is the patient and family caregiver perspective of that. And that's what this research is all about. When we talk about patient and family experience, we talk about questions about how is your care? And let's try to figure out how the care is from the patient's and family's point of view. And in terms of their outcomes, how are you doing? And again, let's figure that out from the patient's So how do we do this? Well, there's actually a very large number, burgeoning number of tools out there that are used to kind of measure patients and family perspectives of their health and quality of life and their care experiences. One set of tools is patient-reported outcome measures, or PROMs. These are not the graduation type of PROMs. These are instruments for measuring how patients are doing. And there are similar tools for family caregivers, tools for measuring aspects of patients and families' health and quality of life from their point of view. And the other piece, other type of tools that are out there is PREMs, patient-reported experience measures. And those are tools used to measure how patients and family caregivers perceive the care that they are receiving. So, before I go any further, I'm going to show you a brief clip that was developed in the context of another research team. This is a research team that was led by myself and Dr. Sajobi from University of Calgary. We co-led a research team on developing statistical methods for patient-reported outcomes. This is usually where I lose half of the audience interest. But actually, as part of this focus on statistical methods, we found it necessary to figure out, well, how do we communicate this stuff with people? And so we started to work with people who could help us kind of articulate even just what is a problem. And so this video was developed by Ben Stenner and Madison Stenner, who you've all been introduced to, and with input from our research team. So I'll briefly show that. It's a very short clip. Maybe not. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So there was an issue with the monitor, and I'll just have to fix that. There we go.
From never to always. Do you have someone you can talk to about your health? From no difficulty to unable, are you able to climb one flight of stairs or walk one block? On a scale of 0 to 10, what is the level of pain you are experiencing? 0 being no pain at all, and 10 being the worst pain you can imagine. We've all heard these kinds of questions before, most typically when we go to the doctor for an injury, illness, or just a simple checkup. These are typical questions from what are called patient-reported outcome measures, or PROMs for short. PROMs are tools that ask questions about people's health and quality of life. They usually contain several question and response scales that patients respond to and are used to gather information directly from patients about their physical, mental, emotional, and social health. Healthcare practitioners, administrators, policymakers, and researchers have been using tools like this for years due to their ability to provide important information about a patient's health and quality of life from the patient's perspective, and better inform decisions for what matters to the individual. But the question is, are PROMs effective? As much as we'd like to apply a one-size-fits-all score for all people in the form of a standardized questionnaire asking about their health, it's really not as easy as it sounds, because everyone is different.
Stay tuned. The next part of the video will come. No.
Although there are a number of roadblocks that
I can't stop the class. So in the research that we do, we use these type of tools called PROMs, and I'm going to focus mostly on PROMs this evening for assessing people's quality of life. And so this is where the word quality of life assessment comes from. And this is an example of a tool developed by Robin Cohen from McGill. She's an investigator, principal investigator with the project that we do. And her and I worked on kind of redesigning this tool to get at measuring what matters to people who are living with life-limiting illnesses in a very efficient way. So the tool includes a series of questions that ask people about their physical, psychological, existential, relationships, environment, cognition, their healthcare experience, and their burden. It can be completed in about 5 to 7 minutes, and then you get a profile of scores that I'll show you soon. That gives you a bit of a sense as to how people are doing, and that could then help a conversation, of course. We don't take the scores at face value. We need to understand what they actually mean. And we have similar tools for family caregivers. This is the McGill Quality of Life Assessment tool for family caregivers that we've also been using. So our research focuses on using these tools to get at, in a very efficient way, how are you doing, how is your care, and what matters to you. And our process we call a quality of life assessment. And it looks something like this. It occurs at two levels. One is at the individual level. This is the person who is living with a chronic condition. We're focusing on people living at home, because most people living with a chronic condition want to live at home. They want to lead comfortable, productive lives at home. And often they are living at home with a family caregiver, whether it's a formal role or an informal role. They may be living at home with a family caregiver or getting other types of support. And so the invitation is for these people to complete these quality of life assessments through an online platform, to communicate on a regular basis how they are doing in various areas of their quality of life. It's like doing lab tests on a regular basis, except this time we're not focusing just on the biological stuff, but we're actually focusing on what's going on inside people. And that gets shared with healthcare providers, and the healthcare providers then use that to make shared decisions together with the patients and their family caregivers, and to enhance person-centered care. So that's at the individual level. But the information also gets aggregated at the population level, where the data gets analyzed and then gets shared with healthcare managers and leaders, who could use that information to figure out, well, where are the gaps in our services, what is not working well, what is working well. It becomes part of a public accountability system, and in addition, information can be used for health policy development and research. So we know from 4 decades of research, that was not my research, you may have done the math already on that, but 4 decades of research, many studies that have shown that this idea can actually have quite a significant impact on empowering patients and family caregivers, guiding more meaningful conversations, improving participation, making care decisions together, and promoting patients and family-centered care. We also know that there's interest in using this type of information on different levels of the healthcare system. So far I've talked about clinical practice, kind of the micro level, at the point of care, but I've also already alluded to what we call the meso level, which is kind of the organizational level, where this information is used to improve healthcare services of organizations by addressing gaps in services, for instance, that are identified by these tools. And it can also be used at the macro level. This is where something like the WHO comes in. The WHO has actually developed a WHO quality of life tool, which is used at a very high level to compare countries and healthcare services at government levels for purposes of accountability and developing health policy and addressing equity type of issues. So that's all the background. But what do we do with all this this background? And so what we found is that the concern that we're trying to address is that although we have quite a bit of evidence, there's also quite a bit of challenges in using this type of information. And one of the challenges is that these tools are not readily accessible, and people don't actually even really know how to use them and what the numbers mean. And so to facilitate that, our research has been focusing on what we're calling a quality of life and practice support system. It consists of 2 components that are administered or developed by Cambion. And Bruce will say a few words in just a few moments later on. But it includes a component of a system that helps integrate information from patients and family caregivers that contribute information about their health and quality of life, and that then by choice can choose to share that information with healthcare providers. This is not a healthcare provider-driven system. Like most of our other systems, what we call patient-centered care systems, they're actually not so patient-centered because they're actually driven and owned by healthcare providers. This system is driven and owned by patients. They could choose who they want to share the information with and when. And when that information is shared, it then becomes part of their access to the Cambion Coordinator application by healthcare providers to inform shared decision and person-centered So the Navigator application is an online platform. Anybody could have an account, and it captures this kind of health data. It does a lot more than I just said, but I'm not going to do a sales pitch right now, and it's not, we're really focusing on the quality of life assessment piece. But it also does have capacity for sharing educational materials and having conversations like kind of a social media type of environment. The result shows something like this. This is actually a graph that shows the results of a patient who completed that quality of life assessment tool that I showed earlier on in those various dimensions. And you can see quite quickly here that this person is concerned about the quality of care, ranks very low, and the physical ranks fairly low as well, is not so concerned, not as concerned about social and psychological issues in this case. So that's how one could make interpretations on that data. And one can also look at that data over time in terms of have people improved or become worse. So a program of research focuses on using that type of technology and developing that type of technology from a patient-oriented research point of view. We want very much to emphasize about this being driven by patients, a system that's designed by patients, that's informed by the priorities of patients, and that puts patients in the driver's seat in a very literal way, where the patients can decide whom and when they want to share information with. We've done studies on developing and evaluating quality of life assessment tools. I showed you 2 of those tools already. There are several more. We've also done two studies on co-designing the online system. Now, we as a research team didn't design the system, but we worked very closely with Cambion to inform the development of that system and to ensure that it's based on principles of patient-oriented research. And then we did studies focusing on embedding this in clinical practice. We have a clinical trial going on in home-based primary care, another clinical trial going on in kidney care, people on hemodialysis, and we also studied this with the palliative consult team. And then, of course, we want to evaluate effectiveness as to whether this is actually having the desired difference. So those studies are in progress, and we end up with needing to focus on knowledge translation. So what have we learned so far? Now, we're in the middle of a research program in a way, but we have learned quite a bit so far. But I'll just summarize it very briefly. There's 2 key points that stand out for me in all of this. This is not actually a question so much about evidence as to whether we have the evidence to make a big difference, big impact. This is more of a question about a need for knowledge translation and support in using this type of information in meaningful ways. So that's one of the key take-home messages right now. We've developed quite expansive systems, many people have, for collecting information, but we don't necessarily know what to do with that information in a meaningful way, and especially to ensure that we don't make decisions based on information that privileges some groups and that disadvantages other groups. So health equity challenges can be very real there. The other is a need for methods to enhance validity of measuring and using patients or person-centered outcomes in diverse populations. Our populations are not homogeneous. We have many different people that look at these, that have different types of healthcare experiences and different types of healthcare outcomes, and that interpret these questions in different ways. And so now we need to find out, well, how does that actually impact the type of conclusions that we can make based on their scores? So with, in one of the roles, I lead the patient-centered measurement methods cluster in the province, which is part of the BC support unit, and I co-lead it with Nina Cuthbertson, who's in the audience here with us. And we've done a series of focus groups across the province to find out actually what matters to patients and family caregivers in terms of methods when we think about measuring their health and quality of life. And one of the things that really came out is, well, we need to make sure that healthcare providers know what to do with this information and use it in meaningful ways. And so how to analyze the data, oh, I need glasses. How to analyze the data, selecting an instrument, we present the results? How do we interpret the results, and so on? So that's one big part of our program of research. We've worked with a team to develop some of these very basic resources to introduce the idea. There's a lot more that needs to be developed, but very basic resources that we've made available online on healthyqol.com, and you can have a look at that if you want. This was led by myself and Kara Shikwa-Kara, who is at the University of Alberta and funded by the Canadian Frailty Network. But actually that's not what brings us here today. And so this was my introduction. What brings us here today is actually a grant that focused more on the statistical methods part, and here's where it becomes a little bit more uncomfortable. But these are methods to enhance the validity of measuring and using patient-centered outcomes in diverse populations. How do we measure when we don't actually have a good frame of measurements that is consistent in a diverse population? The challenge, of course, is that people are different in how they interpret questions about their health and quality of life. And this may be due to their age, their gender, cultural difference, psychological things. And people may also not interpret questions in the same way at different points in time. Somebody might rate their pain at a certain point in time as 2, and then live with pain for a couple of years, and then rate their pain at 4. Now, does the 2 and 4 actually, how do they correspond to one another? Are they still on the same scale? Probably not. And so these are questions of diversity, and is one of the themes that came out loud and clear from our consultation with patients across the province of BC. So now comes the second part of that video that I interrupted earlier. To introduce that idea. This was streamlined, but there was a resolution issue between my screen and this screen, so now I have to do it manually instead.
The second complication is differential item functioning, which basically means different groups of people respond differently to the same questions. This sounds intuitive, but factors like culture, experiences, personal characteristics, and beliefs can affect someone's responses to questions about their health. In some cases, these factors can cause certain groups of people to consistently score higher or lower than others who have the same level of health. Take, for example, this question about mental well-being. In the past 7 days, how often have you felt down, depressed, or hopeless? With response options, not at all, several days, more than half the days, or nearly every day. Particular groups of patients may consistently respond not at all, because they are not as comfortable as another group with expressing negative emotions. This group of patients will consistently have a more positive mental well-being score. Since the mental well-being of the patients in both groups is actually similar, this can lead to inaccurate conclusions by caregivers and other important decision makers. For example, one group may have depressive symptoms which will go untreated. Historically, we've assigned numbers to things such as weight and blood pressure and used these numbers to capture differences in health between patients or changes in health for a patient over time. But the patient's perspective and needs have often been overlooked. Human beings have factors such as emotional well-being, physical well-being, culture, and more that affect their responses to questions about their health. Sometimes, these factors can also introduce bias into the findings or lead to false conclusions that overlook the true overall well-being of an individual. In the end, there must be a change in how we look at health and the modes of gathering information on patients' health, as there is no one-size-fits-all for measuring what matters. Good news. Statistical methods can be applied to achieve tailored measurements for comparing patient-reported outcomes over time and between different people.
So there you have it. This has influenced, this idea of differential 2, another person would say I have a pain of 4, and it just doesn't seem to make the same, have the same meaning. And so, so this idea of the differential item functioning underlies another strand of my program of research. Let me just bear with me for a minute. I'll start it up again. Okay, so it has to do with how do we actually tailor our measurements to account for this diversity within the population? How do we get people on the same metric so that we can actually make meaningful inferences about their scores pertaining to their health and quality of life? And again, this relates to 2 dominant themes that came out of our patient consultation last year throughout the province of British Columbia. One is patients identify that we need tools that are individualized and tailored to them. These standardized things that focus only on the general population could be perceived as problematic and may not capture actually what is important to this individual person. And then also we need to they encourage the development and use of innovative technology for patient-centered measurement, for measuring what matters to patients. And so this is what we've been working on. So I'll give you a very, very, very brief background on measurements. So say, if we think of physiologic measurements, and we might use a mercury thermometer to measure temperature. And that thermometer gives us some data that's in the form of the level of mercury, that it rises or falls. And we then use a measurement model. In this case, it's a very simple measurement model that ties the level of mercury on well-developed physiological properties to a measure by which we could infer what the temperature actually is. The main thing is that the thermometer is actually not directly measuring temperature, it's measuring the height of the mercury, but we could infer temperature from it with a very accurate degree. This is physiological measurement. And then we use that information to make healthcare decisions. I always put this here at the end because, I actually do like measuring for the sake of measuring. I think it's quite fun. But for the most part, actually we measure for a purpose. And so I think it is important to keep pointing that out. Now, psychometric measurements, I don't know if you've ever heard of that term or not, but psychometric measurements, a whole field of measurements coming out of psychology, it's been around for many, many decades, well, actually pretty much a century. And it focuses on measuring kind of inside people's heads, basically, their experience. And so that's what we're trying to get at. And the conventional approach is you have a measurement instrument. That might be something like a questionnaire, say a series of questions about pain. And that measurement instrument produces data. And that data is people's responses to the questions of pain. But there's a fundamental difference here with psychological measurements. And that is that data is influenced by how people interpret and respond to these questions about their pain. So there is a moderator there in the process. And then we use a psychometric measurement model to turn that data into a measure that we can then make decisions about these people that we're trying to measure. Note the disconnect here between the people and the measurement model. That's exactly what we want to address. The measurement model that I just showed can look like something like this. Say we want to measure pain. We do that by asking a series of questions about a person's pain. The pain is the construct, that's what we want to measure. The questions could be like a questionnaire. And then we use a measurement model, which is a series of mathematical algorithms that measure pain to arrive at a pain score. This is the one-size-fits-all approach to pain. The problem with this approach is that people are often asked questions that may not be so relevant to them, just for the sake of the question as part of the tool. And the scores may be biased for or against certain people because people interpret questions in different ways. And so what we're working on is what I'm referring to as a person-centered measurement process. This is not just psychometric, this is now person-centered. And this starts again with a measurement instrument, but now we recognize that there's different people. Note the language that respond to the questions and that produce information. Those people, that information then needs to be transformed into a measure. And what we use for that is what I'm calling a mixture model. A mixture comes out of statistics. They're called latent variable mixture models or random effects models for those in the audience who might unfortunately be familiar with those kind of things. But it actually, I like the word mixture a little bit because it gets at the differences in the like some mixed population. That's literally what it gets at. But it is actually a statistical model. And that model is informed by the diversity in the population. Note that the previous model, the psychometric model, has no link between the patients and the psychometric measurement model. It only goes through the data. In this new model, we built a link between the diverse patients or people and the measurement model itself. And that then gets fed back to personalize the selection of questions that are likely to be meaningful to people, and that becomes an iterative cycle until we reach a score that is useful for making healthcare decisions for a diverse population. So how do we do this? Well, this is where it becomes really nice. So this is, and if you want, I'm happy to send you these publications. I kind of enjoy them actually. So this is a publication I wrote in 2012 where I provided this foundation for actually how do we do this. But actually it's not so much about the formulas. The principle is not so different, so challenging actually. What it is you may recall that previously we had only a relationship between pain and the questions. What that meant is that our measurement model meant that there's a direct relationship between the people's responses to the questions of pain and our measurement of pain. The diversity calls that into question. It says, well, no, hold it. Their responses to questions about pain is not only because of the degree of pain that people may experience, there's some cultural things factoring in there. Or there may be some other health-related things that cause people to get higher or lower scores on these questions. Or there may be some psychological things, maybe personality. Maybe the person's of a personality that never would rate their pain as being severe. And there may be demographic differences. Those are all sources of diversity. What this measurement model does, it takes that diversity and puts it in what we call latent classes. Latent classes divide the population into multiple, relatively more homogeneous populations. And those latent classes also influence how people respond to questions about their pain. The latent classes actually represent what we call response processes, different ways by which people interpret and respond to questions, in this case about their pain. So how do we do this? This is all quite theoretical. Well, what the CFI grant was about was taking this foundation that we've been working on for years. I started this in my postdoc in 2007, and taking this and putting this now into an actual application, which we call Mixture Cat. And it's not really about cats. CAT stands for Computer Adaptive Test. But it takes basically that measurement model and says, look, if we can get some information about the person, their health and their psychological background, some information from their electronic medical record, and we can use that to feed our system information about individual differences. And we can also ask people to respond to questions about their pain. Then that fits into our mixture measurement model that I introduced before. That feeds back to them selecting the next question, which is most likely going to be relevant for that individual person. And that goes through several cycles until you end up of a patient-centered pain score. Now this is only focusing on pain, but of course we can do that for many other types of outcomes. This is just by means of a prototype. So I'll briefly show you what this looks like. We have a little demo. This is not what it would look like in the end, okay? This is a prototype. So it's like a prototype car, doesn't look great, but that demo. First, because in this case, we don't know who the person is, so we actually have to ask some questions about their health and who they are. So these are some very basic questions. Normally you would have some more developed questions. Say this person has osteoarthritis, and typically they won't have both, if possible though. Maybe the person also has some back pain, and there's just a few questions. They might have another health condition, well, they're likely taking some medications. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they find their health okay still. Who knows? Let's say this is a male, and let's say this person is, I don't know, 92 years old. So we have had people of all ages complete these type of tools. So this was the background information. Those questions were selected because of our analyses that showed if we ask those questions, we actually get a pretty good sense of what their response process is going to be like. Normally we would want many more questions, but it gives us a bit of a sense anyhow. And so the system then selects the next question. It selects questions out of a whole bank of questions. Here is 40 questions about pain. Who thought that you could ask about pain in so many different ways? And so based on the response then, this mixture model, remember that nasty graph with all those formulas, is now operating and says, oh, this question is likely going to be quite relevant to you based on the information you provided. And you go through that. And now the trick is, you go through several cycles, and you'll find that at a certain point, the system stops. Moderate. So I won't show you all the questions, but I'm just kind of showing the point. Don't worry, it's not going to do 45 questions. Okay, here we go. So it did 5 questions. Now, what does these 5 questions mean? Well, it took 5 questions that actually produces a score that is almost as accurate as if you would have answered all 45 questions. That's kind of the statistical property underlying this type of approach. So it's a very efficient way of measuring. If you took a driver's test recently, that's kind of a similar type of computerized system, although this one's way more advanced because it takes the mixture in component. So this is showing, when we first answered the question, we had this pain score, and this line shows our measurement error. Now we have another question. I can make it a bit bigger, maybe. Maybe not. No. Now we have another question. You can see that over time, as these 5 questions are administered, the measurement error reduces, and we end up with a fairly accurate score. And that score is reflective of, this is the mixture over here of how the next most relevant item was selected. Well, I won't say more about this because I think I'm going to lose everybody if I do. But it actually gets me quite excited. So this was kind of a demonstration of this process, and actually we can very efficiently get at a very accurate score by asking only a few questions. That's the whole thing. And you might say, well, does it actually make a difference? Well, this graph, this is the only graph I'm going to show, okay? But just bear with me for a minute. So this graph is on another analysis we did on this pain item bank that you just saw. And we did a simulation study where on that horizontal axis, we actually have the true scores, because as a simulation study, we actually know what the actual score of the person is. And then on the vertical axis over there, you see that the pain score that is obtained by our conventional measurement systems that we use. And you see that they don't match up so well. You actually see that 20% of people are kind of way off in their scores, And like normally we would want the line to be like right here with just a little bit of random error, but we've got all this variability. So we've got people in the tails of the distributions that we're not measuring well. On average, we're still measuring quite well. But in healthcare, the average is not really the main thing. We're actually mostly worried about the people that are not average, that are in the tails of the distribution. And this shows that the people who are not average are not being captured well by our conventional measurements. One more slide. This is the mixture cat. And it looks a lot nicer. So now we can see that the mixture cat predicts the pain score almost, but really quite accurate. These differences are extremely small. This would not lead to a clinically meaningful difference decision. And so you arrive at a very accurate score. Now, the negative values are actually very high levels of pain. And you'll see that there is still a little bit of it. And that's not surprising because you need data to calibrate these systems, and there aren't that many people who have so much pain. But for the most part, we see a very accurate measurement. So this is what this research is all about. I tried to unpack what is actually a fairly complicated statistical model and trying to make it accessible. Hopefully it worked, maybe not. But it compares kind of our conventional approach to measurement, which is our one-size-fits-all approach. That's typically what we've done in healthcare. And I think that's kind of why people get turned off a little bit, because they get to answer questions that, why am I answering this question? You know, I just told you I can't walk a mile, now you're asking 10 miles, and it's just irritating. But that happens in our questionnaires. So there's problems. People may be asked to answer relevant questions, or the scores may be biased or for or against them. That's concerning. A person-centered measurement model is a one-size-does-not-fit-all approach. It assumes that people are different in how they interpret and respond to questions. It uses statistical algorithms to administer the relevant questions and try to avoid the irrelevant ones. And it does that through use of mixture models. So I'll conclude there by saying that one size does not fit all for measuring what matters. And we need new methods to address that issue, measuring in diverse populations. I even haven't started talking about translation challenges, for instance, and people from different cultural backgrounds. We need to shift from patient-reported to person-centered outcomes. There's a whole history about this because my chair used to be called patient-reported outcomes, but I intentionally switched it to patient-centered outcomes, and I hope that today's talk might have explained a little bit why. And our system, Mixture Cat, shows promise for measuring person-centered outcomes in diverse populations, but there's a lot more research that needs to be done on that. So I want to conclude with saying this is not my research. This is a program of research that's been very much collaboratively developed. And these are the partnerships that are actively involved in this research. We built a huge collaboration. International University of Exeter and University of Gothenburg and Trinity Western University and many universities across Canada, of course. We have funders, the Canadian Institute for Health Information, the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research, and the Canadian Frailty Network, which has funded a lot of the research. Together, they have funded over $2 million of the research here at Trinity Western University. So we have international, we have universities, funders, we also have professional associations. A lot of the research that I'm talking about here was actually instigated by someone in the room here, which is Carolyn Taylor. She was the director of end-of-life programming in Fraser Health. And she came to me at one point, I think it was around 2010 or something like that, saying that we need to find ways of measuring, we actually need to report to our accreditation bodies to convince them that our services are actually making a difference from patients' point of view. How do we do that? I said, so little did Carolyn know that this was going to be a decade trajectory. In figuring out how we do that well. So very much partnerships over there, and of course industry partnerships. James Boff is in the room here as well. I don't know where James. There's James. And it actually started, initially we worked with James Boff, who out of his company developed kind of this person-centered system that then needed to be expanded, and then we brought Campion on board as well to take that a step further and develop more of a partnership there. And so industry is very central to this, but I don't think I would have been here without that initial collaboration with James. So, thank you. And then all the healthcare authorities. So I just want to, I have 2 more slides, but before I show the last slide, and the very last slide is just thank you. So but before I show the last slide, I want to give Bruce a brief opportunity to share with us how this partnership actually came about and why it's important.
Thanks, Rick. Now, Rick had asked me to explain a couple points about how does this research, how does it line up with the vision that Campion's got, and why does that matter? So I'll talk about that quickly. First, the vision. The vision is really, Rick has gone through this in I think in a fairly friendly way, some topics that can be quite complex, but the bottom line is that the healthcare system as we have it today and historically has been very much about information collected by and used by healthcare professionals. And so one of the big differences, a big vision difference, is about including individuals and families, letting individuals and families play a larger role in their healthcare. And so how does that play out in terms of what Cambion does? Cambion is a health informatics company, a health information platform, and it allows individuals and families to collect and use and share information. And so you've seen a number of times the points when you ask somebody, how are you doing? And how's your care? And what matters to you? Those are questions that you might ask if you're trying to understand and include individuals and families. And so that's what it's all about, is including those kinds of information. Now, if we have information, it's measuring outcomes, it's measuring experiences, it's measuring preferences. If you don't have a good way of understanding what those measures mean, then why collect data? The data is useful, it's only useful if you have good measures. If you have good measures, you get good insight. If you have good insight, you get better outcomes. So the vision for Campion is all about enabling this shift in our health system from a traditional provider-centered health system to one that's including individuals and families. And that shift is not going to happen without this kind of research. This research is tremendous. It's really important. Now, research is one thing, but researchers are another. And so, one of the things I'd like to point out about Rick, and he's already said a little bit, and some the roast that started before a little bit about Rick was if you go through life and you're working with people who have shared vision, have values that are aligned with yours, and that have let's say mutually complementary skills and insights, and you surround yourself by an army of people. This slide actually is kind of I think an understatement of some of the things that we've seen in terms of how Rick works. He is just amazing at how he brings people together, and there's a whole number of you in the audience here who are collaborators with Rick, have seen him do this. You know, this is a really amazing individual. It's a pleasure working with Rick, and I super appreciate being a technology partner in this. Thanks.
I did not
program of research. Actually, I was interested to see when I saw the review criteria for Canada Research Chairs. There's actually a sentence that says that we can't expect as much productivity from a Canada Research Chair on their research output because a significant portion of their time is supposed to be devoted to trainees. I thought that was quite interesting. It's right on the evaluation criteria. But so trainees is a big part of this, and actually all the funding that we've accumulated has funded salaried employed positions for over 50 trainees over the past couple of years. This includes undergraduate students here at Trinity and master's students, as well as doctoral students. Pia Young is here from UBC. There's several other doctoral students that have been funded through this. There's been 5 postdoctoral students who have had full-time annual salaries coming out of this program of research. 5 of them, and there's been 3 or 4 research associates that have also been funded out of this research. And so the trainee piece is a big part of it. And I asked Madison whom I introduced earlier, to actually interview a few of these students. And I thought I'd just conclude there, because the research really wouldn't have been possible at all without all these trainees being involved and being passionate about the work they do. So it's one more 3-minute clip of 3 research assistants.
My name is Danielle Judd, and I am a research assistant to Dr. Sawatzky. I think that doing any type of research during your undergraduate degree gives you a bigger picture of kind of what it is like to study at a graduate level, and gives you an idea of even just what goes into what we know and what we learn in school, and just kind of the process that has taken the science behind it. And I think that's been a really beneficial thing as a student to learn. The information that I've learned in this research and throughout my nursing degree will help to shape how I look at our healthcare system, especially, and the important role that patients and their families and friends play in their care, and the idea of kind of pushing towards a more patient-centered healthcare system in the future.
My name is Will Harding. I worked as a research assistant with Dr. Sawatzky. Yeah, I had multiple of roles as an RA, and that gave me a lot of chances to kind of broaden my skill set, which was really great. I worked on a few projects, and the consistent thing throughout all of them was the team that Rick built around him. The people here were incredible. Like they were a family, and not only did they nurture me and help me develop as a professional, but they were really caring, and that's what I really enjoyed.
My name is Brenda Smith. I'm a registered nurse, and presently I am working on the Quality of Life Assessments and Practice Support System project as a project coordinator. Well, personally, what I'm achieving from working in this role is again just that ability to be working alongside colleagues and nursing undergraduate students. It just in that scholarship environment where we have the opportunity to generate new knowledge or to substantiate or support existing knowledge that we then can hopefully translate into practice.
I think that Dr. Sawatzky's lab is a really good place for students to learn basic terminology and to just learn about research in general. There's a lot of other students working there who are willing to help, and there's on our team for the CFN project, we had a really broad variety of expertise, which was really helpful. People who were really good at looking at the ethics and that side of things were good to learn from, and then people who had different research experience from the past, so it was a really good team to basically learn everything that I came into the project wondering.
Great. So thanks very much this journey. We journeyed all the way from 1946, the WHO definition, to now a highly statistical model of measuring person-centered care. So it's been quite a journey. It's amazing we got it within an hour. So I hope it was informative, and I really appreciate all of you for coming. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Rick. I'm Dr. Barb Astle, and I'm director of the Masters of Nursing program here at Trinity Western University. What an amazing evening. So I would like us to now just bow our heads in prayer. Dear gracious God, we are so grateful for Rick Sawatzky, that he has shared the amazing and remarkable work he has now done and will continue to for the health and the well-being of persons and our population. We're also very thankful for his friends, his family, his students, and colleagues who are here tonight and honor him through you. Thank you, God, for your many blessings.